Illustrator has powerful graph tools for creating a variety of different graph types in Illustrator. If you have the need to create graphs in your designs, you're going to love this feature. I'm going to begin this video with the graph.ai file already open. This is really just a blank document, so you could have just as easily created a blank document and started from there. But I'm going to come down to my graph tool down here, and usually by default, the default tool is going to be your column graph tool. But I'm going to click and hold on that, and you can see that we have a total of 9 different graph types that we can create inside of Illustrator. Now I'm going to start with the pie graph tool, and with that tool selected, I can do one of two things. I can simply click once on my artboard, and that'll allow me to define exactly how big I want the graph to appear. Or instead, I can just click and drag to define the area that I want the graph to occupy. So I'm holding down the Shift key to make it proportional, and I'm just going to let go, and it's going to bring up my data window where I can plug in the values that I want to use for this pie chart. So as an example, if I click in this first cell and I type 5, I can then hit the Tab key to toggle to the next cell and apply the previous value. So I'll just do, say, 20, Tab 50, and if I click the Apply button right here, it's going to update the graph to reflect this change. And at any time, I can come back in here and readjust the value and click Apply, and that's going to update my graph. Now, in addition, I can also import data as well. So to speed things up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click inside of this first cell, and I'm going to click the Import Data button. And if you navigate to your Chapter 12 folder, I'm going to go ahead and select the graphdata.txt file. Now, before I choose Open, I want to point out that this is a plain text file, and it's a tab-separated file. So basically, I separated the columns with tabs and the rows with returns. So feel free to open that up in your own text editor to see what that looks like. So I'm going to choose Open, and you'll see that it now imports the data from that file. And if I click Apply, now the graph is going to be updated to reflect that change. So you can see it's pretty easy for you to modify. Now, in this particular example, all I have is values on this chart. Now, I could add header information as well. And again, to save some time, I'm going to click inside this first cell. Let's import a different file. This time, I'll grab the graphdata2.txt file. Go ahead and click Open. And you can see now I'm putting information relevant to what these values mean. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Apply button, and you can see now that the legend has been created. Now take a look at this. You'll notice that 28 went way down here, and you may be wondering, well, what exactly happened there? Well, that's because my file has an error in it. And I actually did this on purpose because I like to point out that you have to really be careful what values you type in here and how they're entered in here as well. So if I click in here and I get rid of that comma and hit Apply, now Illustrator is happy again and allows you to update that graph the way that you want it to appear. In addition, you could click on the Transpose Row Column button, and that's going to basically flop your values. And if I hit Apply now, you're going to see that the pie chart does not like this structure at all. So it's all messed up at this point. So I'm going to flop the axis again, and you can see too that we lost some data because when we transposed it, it got rid of that one value. Let's switch that again, and let's go ahead and re-import that data. So we'll go ahead and grab graph 2, I'll fix this 28 here, and we'll apply that. And now, again, for the pie graph, it's very happy and it's doing exactly what we wanted it to. Now, let's say, for example, we wanted to display this information in a different way. And maybe wanted it to be in a different chart. So, for example, what we can do, I'm going to go ahead and close this for now. I'm going to come up here to the Object menu, and you want to make sure the graph is still selected. We'll go to Object, down to the Graph category. And if you wanted to go back into the Data field again, you just choose Data, and that's going to open up that window. Now go ahead and close that. This time I'll go to Object, Graph, and I'm going to choose Type. because even though we had created this using the pie graph tool, we can change the type of graph at any given point. Now, the data that I have in here is not going to lend itself to every situation. So if I click on, say, the radar graph, I can go ahead and click OK, and it's going to adjust it the way that I want it to, but you can see the data doesn't really lend itself to this type of a graph. It's going to go to the Object menu again. We'll go to Graph and go to Type. Let's do this one, which is the line graph. Now, when you're in the graph type section, there's a lot of options you can choose. So let's just click OK for now, and you can see that we now have the new configuration here. Now, if I go to Object, Graph, and go to Data again, what we might want to do is open this up, and let's go ahead and transpose this data. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and you can now see that we have a little bit of a better chart that has been created because the data has to be displayed in the right configuration. Now what I'm going to do, let's select all of these. I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit, Copy, and then I'm going to select an additional row here and do an Edit, Paste. And that's now going to allow me to modify this data up here. So I'm going to delete Alaska, and then I'm going to tab over, and let's say we wanted to compare two values. So I'm going to type 2010 in this first field, and then I'm going to type 2013 for the year. And let's put in some made-up data under 2013. So let's assume that the information grew. I'm going to go with, I'm just going to make up some values here. There we go. And if I click the Apply button, you're going to notice that things didn't really work out like I expected them to. You can see that we have two different data sets here, but Illustrator is having a tough time rendering it. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, that's because it's looking at this information as values to process in the graph. So in cases like this, what you need to do is, this is representing the legend, if you will, or the year. So what I have to do is wrap that in quotes. So I'm going to put an open quote and type 2010, and then I'll do the same thing for 2013. And now when I click the Apply button, you're going to see that you get a very different result. This is exactly what you were looking for, and now you can see we have the 2013 value versus the 2010 value. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this. And if we go to Object, Graph, and we go to Type again, we can adjust additional options. So we can say, well, let's add a drop shadow to this. Maybe we want to add the legend across the top as well. So if we click OK, you'll see the legend moves over there, and then we also get a shadow on this object. You may or may not want that. So we'll go to Object, Graph, and choose Type. And maybe we'll want to turn off the drop shadow. You can also add additional information. And there's more options in here. So we can go to the value axis and override the calculated values. We can change our tick marks. And we can even add prefix and suffixes. Same thing for the category axis as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that'll update my graph. And we'll just go ahead and deselect this so we can see, what this chart is going to look like. As you can see, Illustrator makes creating graphs easy by providing the tools to create these graphs natively and precisely.